Hello and a warm welcome to another edition of To The Point. On the show this week, we have a personality who's played a significant role in reshaping the science and technology policies of the country. He was a former DG CSIR. He's currently the chairperson of the National Innovation Foundation and also the president of the Global Research Alliance. I welcome Professor R A Mashelkar on To The Point.
Thank
welcome,
you.
Sir.
Thank you.
Professor Mashelkar, let me begin by asking you a very basic question, and that is, what is the innovation scenario in the country right now?
Well, I look at it in a very positive way in terms of the windows through which I look at. The window of industry picking up on innovation, the window where I'm finding that grassroots innovation, where you look at 1.25 billion people and not just mouths but minds, and their innovations, they are flowering, and universities, institutions are coming up in a big way, and I will explain that a little later. But it depends upon how you look at it. For example, if you look at the Global Innovation Index,
Right.
which determines the ranking of 140 plus countries in terms of innovation.
Where India is ranking almost 71.
76.
In the latest 76 in the latest global index.
And the amazing thing is that year before last, we were 64. Last year we were 66. And this year we are, 2014 we are 76. All right, 64, 66, 76 in 3 consecutive years. So it would appear that we are doing less and less innovation, but that is not correct.
But if I could interrupt you and ask, when you are judging the parameters on which this index is decided, this index is determined, is it really country specific? For example, if a US Chambers of Commerce is determining this index, they would have their own parameters. If India probably is doing it, they would have their own parameters. So what are those factors which really lead to indexing the innovation capacity of a country?
I'll put it like this. See, they always say science is universal. There is only one standard of judging excellence. But technology is local and specific. So therefore the two can't be, and science, technology and innovation is the linkage that we talk about. Research converts money into knowledge, whereas innovation converts knowledge into money. Okay? So our propensity of converting knowledge into money is the one that will determine how well we are doing in innovation. That's number one. Number two, you asked a right point about the indices that we use. The challenge with big country like India is you take any number and divide it by 1.25 billion, it will come to 0.
Right.
So moment you start using indicators which are per capita based, obviously countries like Finland, countries like Singapore, Israel, they will come up the top.
So which means that when these global index figures come out, then it's not a very discouraging sign for India.
I will put it like this. They actually have certain parameters that are measurable. In fact, I must say that I myself am on the advisory board of Global Innovation Index. And I have been raising this particular issue that as far as India is concerned, you have to look at countries like India differently. See, for example, we say last 3 years, we have come down 64, 66, 76. But if you see the innovation dictionary, that is changing. In the innovation dictionary, there are words that are appearing which never appeared before, like frugal innovation, like inclusive innovation, like more from less for more, like reverse innovation, nanovation based on Tata Nano car, and the way it was done. Now, if you are changing the dictionary of innovation on one hand and your ranking is going down on the other hand, there is something missing.
So
yeah, and I'll tell you what is exactly missing.
But Professor Mashelkar, if I could interrupt and ask you again, that when you're talking about innovations, many critics, like you said that in dictionaries, you have various innovations coming up. But many critics also say that innovation cannot be a divider. It always has to be a provider. So do you really agree with that when you say it's a grassroots innovation or it's a general innovation? How do you really categorize that? Is it really fair on the part of the people who are judging it to divide it into various categories?
I'll put it like this. It's not about dividing. It's about looking at innovation as a whole, end to end. Let me take a specific example. And before that, I must say, that what is called as a technological innovation is what Global Innovation Index measures.
Okay.
What it does not measure is non-technological innovation. Now what are those? Business model innovation, system delivery innovation, workflow innovation, organizational innovation, and they sometimes play even a greater role than technological innovation. And India is damn good in this. For example, Arvind Eye Care, okay? A cataract
But the
surgery.
global leaders are not taking into account all these measures.
Yes, that's the point. For example, if you look at Arvind Eye Care, they do a cataract surgery which is done in the US for $3,000 for just $30, 100 times cheaper. You will feel that the quality must be terrible if we are doing it 100 times. No, sorry. I have a table of Royal College of Ophthalmic Surgeons from London and Arvind Eye Care and 9 post-operative parameters, post-surgery parameters. In all 9, Arvind Eye Care beats them. So doing it affordably and yet excellently,
Right.
affordable excellence, that's a special quality of Indian innovation.
But despite all what India is doing, from what you're saying, despite all the milestones it is achieving, it is in the process of achieving in innovations, what are the real roadblocks which you see? Because India still is not a global player as far as the innovations are concerned. That image is really backed by the US or the European nations still.
I'll put it like this. See, for example, every October I spend time in Harvard University as a visiting professor. And one of my close friends with whom I work is Professor George Whitesides.
Okay.
He is the highest cited scientist in the world with H index of 176, which is very high. But at the same time, the market cap of the companies that he has founded based on his Harvard research, can you believe how much it is? $30 billion.
Oh my.
So here is Saraswati, excellence in basic research, and here is Lakshmi, $30 billion. Saraswati and Lakshmi seems to coexist there without any difficulty. What we do is that we do Saraswati Puja differently, Lakshmi Puja differently. We don't connect one to the other. And therefore...
But if you have to bring this Saraswati and Lakshmi, as you say, together, a lot of it has got to do with the kind of policy making which is done in the country. What about the S&T policy which is actually being formulated in the
I would
country?
put it like this. I think each time we talk about subject like that, we look at the government and the policy. I'm sorry. That's not the entire picture. I think it all starts from the value system that people have. There's firm belief that knowledge can be converted
Because
into
policy
wealth.
always becomes a supporter in these processes.
Yes, of course. And don't forget that 1958 India had science policy resolution. In 83 it had a technology policy resolution. In 2003 it had a science and technology policy resolution. And in 2011 we had science, technology and innovation policy. So there is no problem about the policy, it is
But
integrated.
when you talk specifically about India, obviously every country has a different demographics and different economic scenario. But when you talk specifically about India, rural development is one aspect which is always taken into consideration when you're formulating this S&T policy. But at the same time, there are critics who say that no, you cannot divide the grassroots innovation. I'll go back to my previous question again. So is the time ripe now to look at innovations universally, or in the Indian context you need to take along rural development side by side with whatever you are planning?
I would simply say, I'm not a great believer in this or that.
Okay.
I am a believer in this and that. We have to create wealth at the top of the pyramid, but at the same time look at the base of the economic pyramid and do innovation for that. That's why we call it inclusive innovation, which includes the excluded, which includes grassroots innovation, innovation done by the people for the people. But beyond that, you start doing things where you start getting more from less for more and more people, that kind of innovation. You know, C.K. Prahlad, who is no more, he and I wrote a paper in Harvard Business Review, July-August 2010. It is called Innovation's Holy Grail.
Okay.
This has become the top 10 must-read paper in innovation, by the way, and last year it was ranked as #1. What does it tell you? It says that getting more from more is very easy. Making high technology work for the rich is very easy. Getting less from less is very easy. Making low technology work for the poor is very easy. But making high technology work for the poor It's difficult.
That is something.
And how do you do that? And that paper actually shows how to actually do that. Now, that kind of innovation is the key. Why? Because I describe that innovation as affordable excellence. Because normally, when something is affordable, you say it can't be excellent. And when something is excellent, you say it can't be affordable. But I just give you an example of Arvind Eye Care, which is 100 times cheaper but 10 times better. Okay. Right? And you can start giving these examples all across. And India specializes in this, so as to say. Okay?
India specializes, but at the same time, it's a big challenge to bring this affordability factor, knowledge, excellence all together. Professor Mashelkar, I'll have to take a break here. When we come back, we look at innovations in context of the intellectual property rights. Back in a moment. Welcome back. You're watching To The Point with Professor R A Mashelkar. Mr. Mashelkar, before we actually discuss about the intellectual property rights in context with the innovations, I would like to ask you on something about the innovation ecosystem. How friendly is it really, and what are the finer aspects of the innovation ecosystem in India?
I think that's an excellent question, because that is where the crux lies. Because innovation is not an idea, it is idea in practice.
Okay.
It is idea in action. All right? So the journey from mind to marketplace becomes critical in that particular case. Now, take the example of a seed. Idea is like a seed, but you don't eat seeds, you eat fruit. How do you move from the seed to the fruit? You have to have a fertile soil, first of all, which is conducive to incubating that idea, creating a small planted. Then you require inputs, fertilizers and nutrients and so on and so forth, which means venture capital, early stage financing, risk becomes important in that particular case. Then you require protection. So you require herbicides, insecticides, pesticides, etc. because some awful regulation can kill your innovation, And then
probably that leads to the entrepreneurial climate which you talk about.
Entrepreneurial climate, ability to take risk, for example, becomes extremely sort of important, Otherwise, your venture capital, just become private equity.
But can India really ensure these factors about the risk?
No, they are coming up.
Entrepreneurial climate?
They are coming up. I'll tell you.
But coming up, but not in a very big way.
No, they have
still in the nascent stage.
Scale.
But would you say it's in a nascent stage?
I'll tell you. For example, US gets on the average 60,000 technology startups per year. China is around 6,000. We are not even 600. That is the scale at which we are. So we need more technology startups. So what are we doing? We are making efforts on that. I chair YM Bioscience, which is a startup company that has come up based on Indian science. I chair Invictus, which is in supramolecular therapeutics, new cancer therapy. Again, a startup done by young people. I chair the GenNext Ventures, for example. Just now we had a partnership with Microsoft Ventures in order to incubate ideas, accelerate ideas, which can take these young people very far, hold their hands, show them how to make not just research plans but business plans and so on. So you require, multitude of these things, to move forward.
How effective is the IPR regime in India? Because we are not a very IPR-driven economy and an IPR-driven country like the Western countries.
Obviously so.
It's not very evolved.
I'll respond to you like this, that very frankly, 1991 was the time when we liberalized, when we opened up and competition came in. Until that time, what we were doing? Reverse engineering, copying, import substitution, right? Where is the question of intellectual property in such cases? Unless you are driven to create products that are first to India, first to the world. Because we are doing always first to India, like generic drugs, for example. Somebody else had done it, we copied it. And that was perfectly legitimate based on the laws that we had.
As long as it's ethical copying. That's what some professors say.
Absolutely. So that was no issue at all. But now people are getting into creating new molecules, not just copying molecules. So it has happened now recently, you see. So 1991.
But in this kind of a scenario where more and more new prototypes are coming up, how does the Indian government really formulate its policies now?
I can see a lot of activity in Delhi at the moment,
Okay, but when you say activity, that is in terms of what?
No, new policies, for example, encouragement. In fact, in Parliament also there is a bill that is pending now, which is equivalent to a Bayh-Dole Act, which allowed the universities to commercialize their research. There are so many things that are happening, innovation universities, people are being encouraged. I mean, incubators, for example. The Department of Science and Technology of Government of India has created 76 incubators in the last 2 or 3 years, where ideas get incubated, accelerated and supported and so on. Labs are setting up, and for example, now CSIR scientists, they have been allowed to set up companies of their own while they are in service. Previously, that was not the case, So,
But sir, many times it happens when you talk about public sector laboratories like CSIR. Many critics say that, sometimes bureaucracy comes in the way, and there are many policies, which probably you want to formulate and you're not able to take action on it. You've been at CSIR. What have been the hindrances which you've really
the
faced?
Prime Minister gave a brilliant talk in the Science Congress, very frankly, and I was very happy to see his picking up the pain points. And in fact, he said, let scientists solve the mysteries of science rather than the mysteries of our bureaucracy. I have not seen a more direct statement from a Prime Minister. So he is aware, and he has promised that he will help in sort of moving that. But may I tell you, all my life, I have done things despite, not because of. That means all this, basically, we can make it a nice excuse that you cannot do things. Look,
but it's a fact that bureaucracy always hinders innovation.
No, I know, not necessarily. Let me put it this way. 1989, when I became the director of NCL, we are reverse engineering, we are copying. It was 2 years before liberalization. Do you know, I said National Chemical Laboratory will be international chemical laboratory, we will export our knowledge to even multinational companies. And in 1992, we licensed 3 of our patents to General Electric in an area like polycarbonate where they had 40% of world market share. That was the first reverse transfer of technology. Why? Because in that regime, I could have as well been happy about copying. I did not do that. So I think a lot is determined by your mindset on what you want to do. Otherwise, we can have a list of 20 excuses on why we cannot do. We have to run and win.
But the pace at which the innovations are happening in India, do you really see that? Do you see that it's the process, the methodology adopted, and the processes through which it's going? Is it time taking, or is it really happening at the speed at which it's wanted?
No, I'm not happy with the speed, very frankly. We need to accelerate because other nations are running. Why is it that our ranking has fallen? Not because we are doing well, but others are running faster.
But so what is that one key factor probably which would drive the innovation agenda in the country at the moment?
Very simple. I think one is the self-confidence that yes, we can. Like we did in those times where we said we will export to multinationals. The second is flexibility, freedom and debureaucratization are the 3 most important things. Innovation does not strive.
But debureaucratization, it's easier said than done in the Indian context.
No,
how does
we have
one do
to do it. We have to demonstrate basically that we mean business, and therefore in order to create business out of knowledge, this is 1, 2, 3, 4 that we want to do, and we have to sort of move forward in that. And frankly speaking, I will tell you, I have seen individual institutions who are marching ahead despite
the adverse circumstances in which they are
absolutely,
floating.
absolutely.
But the way Prime Minister Narendra Modi is talking about campaigns like Make in India, coming into the digitally empowered Indias, bringing up 100 smart cities across the country, do you think that at least the vision of the Prime Minister is right as far as initiatives in innovation are concerned? And
of course.
How does one?
Of course, for doing all that, for example, Swachh Bharat, it's a great initiative. In fact, I chair the Swachh Bharat Technology Expert Committee, and we are looking at technologies which are scalable, sustainable, affordable, and we are looking at next generation innovations.
But why don't you elaborate on a few things which on which
Yeah,
you
yeah.
really work on?
No. For example, you are looking at toilets, large number, and we are looking at technologies which are disruptive, not less water, but waterless. You get my point, not incremental but disruptive. It's the same thing about water per se. How do you provide drinking water which is affordable and of the highest quality by using cutting edge breakthrough technologies? Similarly, Digital India. Digital India also has to be inclusive India. So inclusive digital innovation. When you talk about creating something like Akash at $35. What are we talking about?
That's
You are
inclusive.
talking about a tablet per child. And when you talk about tablet per child, and can you imagine when millions of children have this, what difference it will make? That is innovation that India only could have done.
But Professor Mashelkar, when the entire talk in the country is about reviving the investment cycle, increasing the FDI cap, especially in the R&D sectors, how would you look at innovations in the context of the R&D which is going to happen, especially when FDI cap is increased?
See, we make too much out of resource, by the way, lack of availability of resource. I'm sorry, it is this that matters. Can you imagine 4 years ago when the Nobel Prize was won on graphene, and one of the winners was a young Russian, 35-year-old postdoc. What did he do? He took a graphite, put it on a scotch tape, put another scotch tape on that, folded, unfolded, folded, unfolded, multiple times, so that finally you had a single atom layer thick, that is graphene. That was a breakthrough. How much does a scotch tape cost? 10 rupees. How much does graphite cost? 5 rupees. In 15 rupees, the basic idea of a Nobel Prize was born. I think talking about resource all the time, and we have done research.
When you give this example, the basic question which comes to my mind is probably that what is the basic difference between innovation and invention?
Yes, invention is just like demonstrating that you can make that graphene. But innovation will be making use of that in actual practice.
But Infosys CEO Vishal Sikka, he has pledged about $250 million only for India on innovations.
Yeah.
So do you think that the corporates in a bigger way now should come forward and maybe pledge certain amounts in millions of dollars
Absolutely.
for innovation?
No, it's again going back to resource. I'm going back to ideas. How do you stimulate those ideas? I met Sikka on the other day during the Infosys Science Award, and he was saying that my more from less for more, he's propagating all over Infosys. And that is right, as a matter of fact, because that is where India is going to win. If you create more from less resource for more people and more profit, you are winning. And therefore, we will be always a resource constrained country till we really become a middle income country. And I don't want to wait until that time. I want to do it today.
But then the basic question again comes back to the policy making and the entire innovation agenda of the country.
Yes.
I mean, how do the politicians respond? How does the bureaucracy respond to it? So a whole lot of factors. So ultimately, everything boils down to the decision making at the government level. How
I
does
agree. I fully agree with you, but that is where our Prime Minister is empowering them. No? I mean, if you see the secretary, the bureaucracy, etc., he is saying take decisions, be bold in that, and that's wonderful. What more can one sort of say? So the ball is in our court.
But still, what is the reason why, in the earlier tenures of the various governments which have been in power, science and technology has not been the topmost agenda of the government? What has been the real reason? Of course, the priorities are there, but science and technology has never been the main priority of the government.
I wouldn't say that. I would say exactly the other way around. I have been in Delhi as the Director General of CSIR. I was the DG for 11 and a half years.
The government's being science
we had
friendly is a
5
different
prime
thing, but
ministers.
is becoming facilitators of science.
Yeah. And we had 5 prime ministers. I have dealt with 5 prime ministers because they used to be the presidents of CSIR. And I can unequivocally tell you, each one of them supported science fully. That is one thing. I have never seen, because I have been in the hot seat, running the biggest industrial publicly funded R&D in the world. And I have not seen that, I can tell you. So right from our independence, the kind of achievement that we have today, for example, our Mars mission, doing it in 74 $million as against $1 billion that the others take, and doing it right first time. How did it happen? Because it has been, the space program has been supported not just last year or year before. It has been supported right from and there has been an implicit faith that science and technology and innovation are going to be the key. I think where we have missed is looking at conversion of knowledge into wealth.
Do you mean to say that now India now actually should be focusing, as far as innovations are concerned, of converting knowledge into wealth? That should be the major focus of the country?
It should be. And knowledge into wealth is one, but wealth for all.
Okay.
Inclusion. Because we have so many, and therefore creating innovations by which you can give access equality despite income inequality.
Can you to talk about this grassroots innovation. There are many times when the knowledge provider gets exploited because there is no formula of that reciprocity. People come in, they share their knowledge. Perhaps the knowledge provider gives the knowledge. Probably the professors could go back, get paid in dollars, for the kind of research paper they make. But then that reciprocity is not there because ultimately the knowledge provider doesn't get anything in hand. So how does one ensure that they are not exploited, the knowledge provider is not exploited?
Well, that's exactly what National Innovation Foundation is for. These are the rules of the game we are trying to bring in. Not only that, we are demonstrating that this is possible. A recent example is a 13-year-old girl, Shalini, from Bihar. She saw her grandfather walk with great difficulty, climb the stairs with great difficulty because he had the walker which could not be adjusted. And she said, I will create a new walker. And she created a new design. NIF came in, helped her in not only redesigning it, but also getting it licensed to a manufacturer who is going to produce 10,000 walkers this year. It's a unique sort of walker. And she is going to get sort of royalties. Now, here is a brilliant example that girl had an idea, but we made sure that not only it is manufactured, but the royalties as well as the premium, 2 lakh premium came. It went to that girl.
But sir, how many people would know about initiatives like this? Because the awareness program is not at a very high decibel level that people...
That is what we need to do. Okay. Anywhere I go, I talk about Shalini. And anywhere I go, I say there are millions of Shalinis. Can we help them to do what we did? Because what was the last time you heard about a 13-year-old girl's innovation getting into manufacturing? We have this. It's the question of connecting those dots.
That's exactly what Rajya Sabha TV is doing.
Yes, terrific, terrific.
Professor Mashelkar, it is a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you as usual.
That's it on this episode of To The Point. See you next time with another personality. Goodbye and thanks for watching.